What's up, Steve? What are you doing, man?
Jesse! What are you doing?
Working on Pogle's paper. Got ridiculous. 15 to 20 pages.
What's it on?
Revolution and slavery, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Actually, that's a video game because I'm just this bored writing it.
Oh yeah, not many people put those two together, Revolutionary War and slavery, you know. People don't, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really covered a lot, but it is a very important topic because if you really look at it, I mean, the revolution impacted slavery almost as much as slavery impacted the revolution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, so what's your thesis statement? They stocked up beforehand.
Well, yeah. Let me go over it for you real quick. It's not too difficult. My main goal here is just to like mess with Pogle. So I kind of had an overall strategy, pretty much so I can slack off and get a good grade without actually putting in content. Right. Make it fun outside it. Whatever. Anyways, so basically what I did is I went in at first and I showed all the the former slaves, African Americans, blacks that fought on both sides of the war. I gave a few examples. Started the war, we talked about Crispus Attucks. He was a former slave that was one of the first ones to die at the Boston Massacre. And after that, I started introducing the topic more.
So he had a luxury. He was a free man. Free black man.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say he was a freedman. It's kind of debated, like what he actually was, but there is an old slave ad that mentions a name similar to his, and so a lot of historians now are starting to think that he was a runaway slave. But he was, it's really cool, he was actually a sailor for many years. And so what happened was he went into Boston, and basically the British was pretty much pissing everybody off at this time. And so with the soldiers that were now staying in
if he was a slave, he wouldn't be fighting for the Americans, of course.
Well, I mean, with the Boston Massacre, you can't really say he was fighting for the Americans, but what he was doing was, he was a sailor, and he was due to go out next month. Well, while sailors are in port, once they get everything unloaded, they're waiting for their next voyage, they don't have a lot going on, so they find day labor jobs. And so basically, Attucks was looking for day labor. I mean, he couldn't find them because there were all these British troops in the area that were already getting paid, but when they were on leave, I mean, they would do whatever for pretty much nothing. I mean, they would work for very little because it was just a little bonus income and they had nothing better to do. So all the good day labor jobs were basically taken up by these British soldiers, and it absolutely just extremely pissed off people like Attucks that depended on this day labor when they were in port waiting for their next voyage.
Not too fond of the British, yeah.
Yeah, and there were a lot of reasons behind it. But basically, with the Boston Massacre, the British came in, and according to court records, a barber's apprentice got hit by a British soldier because, according to him, the barber's apprentice had disrespected an officer. So that happened. Tensions were already high. It built up, and eventually led to the massacre. But anyways, I started with that, and then I kind of went to the Revolution's effect. I talked about Prince Estabrook, which was at the Battle of Lexington. He got injured there, and yeah, sorry.
Guess a little distraction there.
It was a little distraction, but anyways, so talking about Estabrook, he got injured fighting at Lexington, and basically.
And he was a slave.
Yeah, he was a slave. He was completely enslaved.
So if he could have foreseen the future, realizing what America was in for after that.
Yeah, he
would have been emancipated about 100 years.
Well, Prince Estabrook, because he did fight, I think he was emancipated in 1783.
So
but I mean,
the lucky ones.
Yeah, if he was fighting, I guess for his culture, for his race, he might have had some second thoughts about backing the American cause there. But
especially that invention in 1793 of the cotton gin.
Good on your dates here, man.
Yeah,
I'm impressed. It's almost like you rehearsed for this.
It kind of upped the production a little bit.
Just a little bit. It did.
The importation. Yeah.
But anyways, back to that overall strategy for Pogle. So basically, I've been kind of scouting it out this semester because my motto is, the best grade for the least amount of work possible. And I figured that, like most historians, Pogle would not enjoy math. So what I did at the very beginning is I just hit him with this barrage of math. I even, when I sent in my paper, when I'm sending in my paper, I'm actually going to attach all these Excel sheets with it too that has all this slave trade data. So it just completely just befuddles him. You like that, befuddle?
Yeah,
that's a good word. Anyway, so it's just going to he's just going to read this. He's going to say numbers, numbers, numbers. This is terrible. Numbers, numbers, numbers. But because, it's numbers. Historians don't understand that. So he'll be absolutely confused. And then when I actually go into the history argument, he'll be so half asleep by then he'll just want to skim over the content.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty good plan. But anyways, all the math, it basically showed, like you said earlier, right before the revolution actually broke out, the battles themselves, slave owners came in and bought tons of slaves.
Stocked up.
Oh yeah, the purchasing levels just increased by 300%, and then once the war itself started, British embargoes, things like that, it shut the trade down.
Right.
So it kind of went from that, and eventually once the war ends, the slave owners, traders start coming back in, and then there's a huge spike again. But it's spike.
Oh, spike.
Spike. Yeah. Spike. Like you got to spike your lemonade.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So stressed out after this paper that I'm going to spike my lemonade when I get home. Yep. Anyways. And so once I do that, I go into the content, and I try to follow the war, but I also try to keep it in like a geographic context, because my goal is to show, yes, how slavery affected the outcome of the war. They fought on both sides. I go into Lord Dunmore's proclamation, and I try to stick on the American side of things, how his proclamation affected runaways, look at runaway ads to see where the owners think they're going. And so many of them say, I think he's fleeing towards the British Army, or I think he escaped on a British vessel.
Which we emancipated him quite a lot earlier than you lot.
Oh, because you're British.
I think, what was it, 1808?
You're in America. So we is American. You're in America.
Yes. Yeah.
So they, America.
That them over there.
Across the pond.
They would have had a bad deal.
Right. Right. Anyways, they did emancipate them, but it wasn't because of some great interest in some great humanitarian effort. It was because the British wanted to cause unrest. So Lord Dunmore issued his proclamation first, and he said basically any person of fighting age, any male that wants to come fight for the British Army. He was in a bad situation at this point. He was losing numbers pretty rapidly. He needed to replenish. He needed to get out of there. And he had threatened to do this before. He was kind of following through. So he basically said, if you fight with the British, we'll emancipate you when the war's over. Well, later, General Clinton came in, and he expanded that. And he just said, if you run away, period, come to the British, we'll free you. Yeah, and he did that, again, not because he was a big humanitarian, but because he realized that the more slaves that are fleeing, the more that hurts.
Try to call him a humanitarian.
No, not at all.
No.
And it's kind of, you got to notice too that it was
a war aim.
Absolutely, but he wasn't freeing loyalist slaves, only patriot rebel slaves. So if they would flee, when they fled, it would hurt the rebel economy, and it would also kind of cause some fear. Like in Virginia, you have a lot of slaves that are fleeing South Carolina. As those slaves flee, it causes unrest, violence. It could lead to a general uprising, and that just kind of hurts the rebels all around. So anyways, I do that, but like I said, I kept it kind of for a geographic context. So I go in, I talk about that, use the slave ads, some parliamentary documents, some Virginian congressional documents, things like that, and just really show the feelings that people had based on these actions, and just really how it affected that society. And then, of course, I used the slave trade itself to show how the war affected the trade. So, they kind of had this mutual relationship. The slaves, through being freed, running away, fighting, impacted the war, and then the war itself, through disrupting the trade, pretty much causing or influencing Lord Dunmore to issue his proclamation, it affected slavery. So it's kind of a back and forth there. But then once I get through with the United States, I talk about how this affected the entire Atlantic world, and that's when I kind of go back into the numbers again. Just, in case Dr. Poggle started to come out of this, he started saying, well, I'm kind of interested in this, and I'm going to start evaluating it deeply. Throw some more math in there for him. Just knock him out. It's a good strategy. It keeps him on his toes. So, I do that, and I showed that the slave trade coming out of Africa shut down. I showed it in the Caribbean because the Caribbean islands, they were so specialized. They would grow sugar, they would grow all these cash crops, coffee, things like that, but they wouldn't grow food. So they were dependent on trade from the United States, and have these parliamentary documents of where they come down and they say, or where they send these letters to Britain and they say basically, we need to open up trade with America because we're starving. We can't get food. They couldn't get the food that they normally fed the slaves. It was too expensive for the British to bring it down because they were doing this big triangle where Americans could kind of just come down and go back. It's a lot quicker, a lot cheaper. So there was this huge issue there. And
those sugar plantations were really nasty, eh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The conditions on there were awful enough until when the slaves weren't getting fed. There was actually a 1776 or 1777, there was actually a Jamaican slave rebellion. And a lot of it was inspired as when the British Army left Jamaica to go fight in the United States. As soon as they pulled out, these slaves, with the slackened defenses and being as hungry as they were, rose up. And it was put down, but it was inspired by the events going on in the war, the lack of food, everything like that. So there were these huge Atlantic these conflicts. The trade was even affected in Brazil. That's usually something that doesn't get too affected, and it wasn't as huge of affected everywhere else. But because the slave trade was primarily ran by the British and Americans at this point, when they went to war, it affected the entire Atlantic world. So, that's pretty much my stuff in a nutshell.
Wow,
but
that's quite a nutshell.
Yeah, it's pretty complex, but it was interesting. And like I said, as long as I can keep Poggle on his toes, I think might be able to slip by with something here.
Yeah.
So
seems like you have quite a lot to offer there. Wow, it makes mine seem like it's.
You put 90% BS, 10% hard work, and you usually can slide by.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
You've been here a semester longer than me, right?
I actually haven't. I think you started last fall, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're same time.
I see.
Yeah, so I was just raised as a natural BSer. I think it's just a Southern thing.
Because that's where I befriended you.
Oh, did you? Because the BS or because?
Yeah. Yes.
I could say, Stephen, your hair looks nice, but we both know that's BS because you don't have any.
Oh, Jesse, that's the reason I am with you. I wanted to pull an old Tecumseh on your hair.
A Tecumseh? Is that your topic?
He's part of it.
All right, so I told you mine. I showed you mine. Show me yours now.
You showed me yours.
Right.
I've delved into a subject that I wasn't that familiar with.
Oh, really?
No, I just haven't. Excuse me?
Women?
Yeah, not really. That's another reason why I'm. No, it's the Battle of River Raisin. You ever heard of that?
River Raisin?
River Raisin.
Is that does that swim in your brain?
No, it's actually, it's the place, but it's a part of Frenchtown. Frenchtown, during the War of 1812.
Are we in Canada now?
We are in Upper Michigan.
Okay.
So
Southern Canada.
Yeah, basically. And I'm glad you asked that because that was the vital port. Detroit was a vital port during the War of 1812.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
To gain that port for the Americans, or the fort at Detroit,
Right.
would be the gateway to Upper Canada.
I can see that.
So,
interesting.
it's not the reason that fort was taken by the British. I've got a demonstration for you.
You got a demonstration?
Yes, I do.
That might help.
It's a bit nerdy.
A bit nerdy.
Yes, it's brief.
I'm ready. What is this, Stephen? Really?
Yes.
Really?
Sorry.
Let me give you some room here. I gotta say this.
This is Sir Isaac Brock.
Okay.
He
I mean,
originally took Detroit
That's also
from
Darth
a
Vader.
small garrison.
correct.
I know, I have nothing else to read. I don't have any War of 1812 soldiers, so
Darth
this is going
Vader
to have
works.
to be Sir Isaac Brock.
So was Brock an evil guy, or is this?
Oh no, he was a hero to Canada and Britain, and he knew the land, he knew the ports, he knew the entrances all along the St. Lawrence. He was in charge of Upper Canada. Well, he was killed on the Niagara River, the Battle of Queenstown, I believe, in 1813, after he'd taken Detroit. So he was the hero of saving Detroit from the Americans
Okay.
prior to being killed later that year.
So can I see a reenactment? Do you have anything else to
Well,
show me?
he's our hero of Detroit. This is the
Okay.
hero of Detroit.
Okay.
Yes, everybody praised him. Great.
So he's dead.
Dead.
Okay.
He's dead.
He's dead.
He's done dead.
He's deader than a squirrel with a rat shot. Something like
This
that.
man right here and his Redcoat Army,
Okay.
Proctor, they fight for Upper Michigan. They realize the importance of Upper Michigan and this territory, which is a vital port, like I said.
Right.
This is the second battle.
Second battle for Detroit.
River Raid. Pretty much.
It was going back and forth across the river, basically.
Well, Fort Detroit was already under British control,
Okay.
but this
So your paper was
Winchester.
on this one battle.
Winchester and his American army came in
Right.
on January 18th, 1813.
Right.
It was about a 5-day battle.
Okay.
Winchester, this is Commander Rex's Winchester,
Okay.
comes in with a small garrison, and on the 18th of January,
And-
easily overtakes
These are the Americans.
Frenchtown, River Raisin.
These are the
Frenchtown.
Americans.
These are
And
Americans.
those are
in the blue.
okay. Yeah, I got the red coats. That's easy to remember.
So
Okay, so they come in and
they
take
come
this-
in, take over. He's dropped his gun. Doesn't have sights on it, anyways. It doesn't matter.
That sounds like the British, anyways.
Yeah.
Always dropping and running.
Yeah.
Or like the French, but let's be real.
Well, it was actually River Raisin was Frenchtown. It was.
Okay, so
it was
they
a small
might have been
town.
some French.
So in comes a larger British army, not by much, and takes this. The reason why this is important again, because Fort Detroit was 26 miles north.
Okay.
So with the larger army under Proctor, who wasn't as popular as Brock,
Right.
came into Frenchtown and destroyed Winchester's army, actually capturing Winchester, who goes up to Canada to jail for
So but he's captured,
a year.
dead.
Yeah, lots of casualties. The reason why it was a high casualty rate is because they had effective fire with their artillery.
Okay.
And also
Oh, there's more.
we have, yes, this character here, Pre Vissler, he's a bounty hunter. Bounty hunters, we all know, have no allegiance, even though they are a very vital part of the story.
Okay.
This is Chief Tecumseh.
Okay. So this is the Native Americans.
Yes, he's representing the Native Americans,
Right.
even though he's actually killed later on as well. But he's in allegiance, of course, with the British. And on the 23rd of January,
Okay.
after the reason why there was such a high casualty rate on the American side
Mhm.
was because the Indians went in and the wounded soldiers in Frenchtown, they went in and killed a lot of the wounded soldiers,
Mm.
pulled them out of the houses. But
Kind of under the cover of not like kind of a raid, or was it a full
yeah,
attack?
because it wasn't, of course, the British, oh, we don't really see what you're doing, but you know, kind of that's what the dilemma is the Americans see these British siding with savages, but you can't really call them savages when that's a part of that was how they fought.
Right.
They didn't take prisoners. And another factor is they were kind of out for blood and
Right.
vengeance due to
Because
how they were treated.
These guys are pretty pissed at this point.
And this is borderline their territory.
Right.
So if that expands any further west, this is the Northwest Territory, if it expands any further west, it's going onto their land once again.
Gotcha.
If it sides with the British, they're going to draw that line where it was supposed to be post-Revolutionary War, or excuse me, the post-French and Indian War, expanding into the lands in the west.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So your entire paper was based around this battle, specific battle?
Yeah, but it was also control for Canada. They tried to control Canada. Benedict Arnold tried to get into Canada in 1775.
Right. Didn't work out.
No, it didn't work out too well. He believe he gained Nova Scotia and he got Montreal, but Quebec was considered the fortress in Canada. He wasn't able to penetrate that. It was winter,
Right.
of course, pretty frigid conditions. Got cold, backed up. It was considered, Furling told us, they considered actually invading Canada again during the Revolutionary War. However, they scrapped the idea. And during the War of 1812, they thought it would be a fairly simple conquest, but it.
Now, what do they think that? Was there anything that like hinted at it, or were they just kind of cocky Americans at this point?
They didn't think that Canada wasn't until pretty much Brock came over and bolstered that army, and it was scattered. They had to protect all these along the Niagara River, the St. Lawrence River, and the Great Lakes. Of course, having control of the Great Lakes was the key.
Right.
But and Americans, just like the British, actually did lose Fort Detroit close to the end.
Right.
But the Americans invaded into Canada in certain parts. They got York, Toronto. But by the time it was over, that was it.
Pretty much took care of it.
Yep, that's right.
Interesting.
And if you want to further read about the War of 1812, then there's some.
I mean, we actually have a book coming out.
That's right.
Don't you like that? He gives us like one of the largest books right before the end of the semester. You'd think he'd give us a break.
Yeah.
Pop was a slave driver, man.
It's over though. So yeah.
What?
Oh. Yeah.
What is that?
Ooh.
Is that your wife calling?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of slave drivers.
Fish and chips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look at that. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice English
Nice.
meal there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are you having? Hamburgers, hot dogs?
Oh, what, for dinner tonight? I have no idea, man. Probably whatever I cook. All right, man. Well, have a good day.
You too.